Now, one important thing to note and to remember, I'm going to move this over as well so it's easier to work with over here. One thing to remember about the Octo Rex is essentially what this is it's a Rex file player, all right? And it manipulates the information that it's given, but a Rex file, which is what you see down here below, and when you load this up, you know, a lot of times it looks like this. So you got to open this up down here. But what happens is there are certain DAWs and certain pieces of software that will allow you to take an audio file or clip and slice it into what's called a Rex file and the extension .rex. And essentially what this is in order for it to be a Rex file that works effectively, it gets sliced based upon bar and beat and any type of groove style that belongs to the pattern that exists. So in order for it to do it effectively, it has to know what's the original BPM, how many bars are we looking at, what was the meter that was used. So you can see 4/4, 2 bars, 130 BPM. And then what it does is it slices the piece of audio based upon the transients so that they can be recalled independently. And the beauty of that is that if they can be recalled independently, then they can be manipulated more easily for tempo. So what it'll do is it'll slice it all up, and not everything actually has to fall on the grid. It could be anywhere in between the grid or anywhere off the grid, but as long as it's sliced up, once it's sliced, the Rex player understands where the beat markers have to line up with the grid, so when you tell it to change tempo, it's still going to be using the same audio file. It's just going to stretch it out and have those slice marks aligned to the grid the way that they're supposed to. The beauty of that is you actually get to go in then and play individual cut slices from a pre-recorded piece of material. You know, the beauty of that is then you can technically build your own patterns. Now, I'm going to run you what exists here, what comes up as the default loaded Rex file. But you can actually import your own Rex files, and that's kind of what this folder is here for down at the bottom. So you can browse and import your own loops. They have to be set up in a Rex file. And then, you know, you hit run. The autoplay option or the run option is fairly simple. Just hit run. And what you'll do is you'll load into these slots, and you can see it down here, select loop and load slot. And each one of these is a slot, and there are different patterns or different sliced loops that go in here, so you can cycle between them. When you toggle between them, it toggles between them based upon the grid, so it'll do it at the downbeat. So as I switch, you know, and if you go to something else, these all. Now this one, you just build your own song because each essential loop slice is just one set of strumming on a specific chord. You can see open strums, key of A, and you can see each one's labeled A major 7, C, E7, G minor 7, G minor, and C minor. So you can just toggle between them. And then, of course, if you want to trigger these independently, now I'm just holding Option to do this here on the Mac, but these are actually assigned to the keys. And let's see where. Now you have to make sure you're in the right octave, so it looks like we're just at -1. And there's slice 1. so essentially it's. And then if you see this note to slot option here, what that is just saying when you're playing the keyboard, that red dot is signifying which one of these devices you're actually going to be playing when you play the keyboard, or which one of the loops. Oops, sorry. Now, a couple things to think about with this device. First of all, you can trigger everything via MIDI. You could run it and program just these overall slots so that they're activated. You can also sequence the information down below. And one thing you can do is see where it says copy loop to track. Normally, you'd right-click on most of your devices and say, hey, copy that pattern to track. You can still do that here, or you can just hit this button here. Let's go back to the drum, one of those drum sets, because this guitar doesn't really allow for, whoops. Hold on, there we go. Oh, what the heck? There we go.
Something you can put in a piano roll. Like you can during the drum set.
Let's go back to one of these. Okay, so now there's a bunch of patterns to choose from. So really, you don't have to go with one of those. If you wanted to, let's say we did go with some drums. Let's go with something a little more fun. Hold on, forgot all the other stuff's running. So let me just hit run on this. It'll blow you out of your seat. Oh. Okay, so there's this guy. So let's just say we take that. All right, all good. Let's try this out. Okay, one of the things we have is if we do copy to track or copy loop to track, just remember anytime you're copying to track that where is it going to be placed? It'll be placed specifically on that device's MIDI path, but when you copy it, it'll be dropped in between the left and the right marker. So be sure to make sure you actually choose where that is before you just hit copy to track, the copy loop to track. This is what the loop looks like when you copy it to track, okay? It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna undo that and only do one bar just for the sake of showing you this. Now, when you look at the MIDI, what the MIDI is doing, because of the way the slices are activated, if you play these on the keyboard, each one of these slices is assigned to a half step on the keyboard. So when I look at them, you can see it, where it's assigned right here. That one's assigned to C, C sharp. Oh, it's not showing it. I don't know why it's not showing it. Let me see real quick.
It was showing it a second ago.
Maybe it's because it's not doing it there either. Well, let me run back to this real fast so I can show this to you though. Because those are assigned in that method, when you go look at this in the MIDI form, these are all slice numbers. You can see essentially how these slices are triggered. Now, some of them are longer than others because the slice itself is longer than others. So like the slice duration is super important here. So you can see this slice is longer than this slice. So that's why in the sequencer, when you look at the sequence, you see some that are longer than others. But what this means and the beauty of this whole thing is if you want to go in and recreate the pattern or do something different with the pattern, let's say I loop this, I'm going to activate loop at the bottom so it'll play back in a loop form. Oh, hold on. I don't know why it's still doing that. Let's go to mixer, bump squat. There we go. Sorry, when you run the MIDI, you just have to make sure while you're running the MIDI that you deactivate this enable loop playback because it'll play it twice and it'll sound phasey like this. So what you do is deactivate it when you're running the MIDI. There we go, much better. So check this out. If I want to rearrange, like this is the snare, I don't want that snare beat there. I want it here instead. Okay? So maybe what we have to do is, you know, I didn't move it to the right slot. Sorry. Or maybe what we want to do is if I back that up and say, you know what, I want that snare hit twice. Copy, paste. Hold on. I don't know why it didn't voice it. Let's see. Take the snap off. Maybe there we go. For some reason, when having those MIDI notes line up all the way against each other like that with no gap seemed to not allow it to re-trigger correctly. But see, the beauty of that is because you're like, well, you know, why would I really want to change pattern if I like the pattern? This is why, in most cases. So I'm going to go back and put this back where it was. Okay. If you're going, hey, copy, paste, 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 for a whole phrase, more than likely at the end of the phrase, you want it to do something different. So it doesn't do the same dumb thing the whole time. And you know, even more identifiable when we look at, let's go back. You know, I think the sound doesn't necessarily lend itself to that kind of option. So let's go back. Let's just go down to our acoustic drum set. You know, let's pick this guy. See how this goes. Rename this. Okay, so let's go do that. Right. What happens is, again, this pattern gets very mundane and boring after a while. So let's say, all right, we know, all right, at this point in time in the juncture, I just want to do something different on the second time around to the phrase. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to manipulate the pattern. Boom, boom. Find my snare hit, copy it. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it was out of snap again. Sorry, I just said activate snap to grid. There's my grid resolution for this, so that I can tidy this up. But I think I'm gonna add another snare hit over here. I don't know why that's still. Oh, because the length is a little long. Let's see. Copy paste. That's really weird. Why it's so far off. So let's see this. All right, and you see it's just a simple hit. All right, so now if I go back to, you know, my phrase, maybe I want to do every other like that. So I'm just gonna, let me get rid of these guys, copy paste, Command V, Command C. Let's roll that, see how that works. All right, so maybe on the fourth one here, we want to do something different. And what we can literally do with this is if we break this up enough, actually I'm going to break it up even more. I don't know if it'll let me do this very well. Oh, whoops, sorry, I keep forgetting I'm not snapped. Copy, paste. Sorry, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to there we go. And then back to 16, or no, wait, 32nd. Sorry, I'm hearing a rhythm. This should make it super easy. Slide over. Bam. Now there's another snare in here. There's that one. This one. There's one more. So it doesn't feel so static. And then we just dial it back. You know, just to give it some more flavor. Copy, paste. And then, you know, I'm going to dial this back just a second. Roll this. Sorry, this door is just so freaking big. Of course, I was listening to this. I'm like, it'd be cool if there was one more hit. And let's see. Let's take this one. There we go. Let's try that. Let's see. I might have to modify just a little bit of this. I don't know if we can do. I see. What we'll do is we'll just cut it. Sorry, I'm just going to cut this in between the bar at the half. Watch how this works. I'm just going to cut this at the half, replace the front end with this original beat.
That make things easier.
And then that should be the pattern, I'm pretty sure. Let's try that. You know, then just go in here. one additional thing, and we'll wrap this up. One more thing about that. Sorry, I kind of zoomed through that to kind of give it some processing. One more thing about this, and this is probably the most fun element about this at all that exists inside of this device. The beauty of the Dr. Octo Rex is that in this player, it essentially gives us what we're used to seeing in the form of a synthesizer, things like the filter and the LFO. So we can actually modulate the samples. And there's a couple ways we can do it. We can do it with this information, and we do it here, it's all global. So if we run this pattern, sorry, I forgot to activate it.
Does it already have to be a Rex file when you import it?
Yes. Yeah, otherwise it won't know the bar beat elements.
How do you do that?
Typically you're going to use a DAW that'll export Rex. I know Pro Tools will import Rex. I don't think you can create the slices in Pro Tools. I'm pretty sure, because I know you can build Apple loops in Logic, so my assumption would be that you might be able to do Rex files in Logic, but you can do Rex files you could buy a DAW that's specific to just cutting up Rex files. Recycle was a very popular one.
Is there a software you can just buy?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is you can buy a piece of software that's just for Rex creation. You can cut up the loops. Well, check this out. So in the globals, a lot of these controls look the same. Your oscillator information, your filter envelope, right? Because remember, your filter envelope is the ADSR of the filter. And then you have the LFO, which is going to give it some sort of warble or movement, and then the amp envelope. So let's just run this real quick and start applying some stuff. Remember that the notch is a cut. High pass filter allows the highs to pass, and that's with a 12 dB per octave reduction. And the band pass filter, low pass filter allows the lows to pass, and highs are cut at 12 dB per octave, and then 24 dB per octave, which is more aggressive. So let's go to 24.
So these filters and envelopes seem to be common amongst all of the instruments.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's so important to understand their basic functions. Yeah, but yeah, if we do it like this, and then we just go, all right, we like that filter. Let's say we do the low pass at 24. Now, the resonance is how much it rings out at that frequency. But I'm going to do this real quick. Let's give it some filter envelope. Notice this is fast attack, so it goes right away. Slow attack, takes a while. All right, let's bypass that. Let's go with some LFO. Remember that the sync, it means it's attached to the tempo of the song. All right, so when you do the rate, it's giving you quarter note, 16th note. These are resolutions of the beat. And we have to apply the amount. Now, if it's assigned to the oscillator, it's going to be assigned to this oscillator pitch adjustment here. If it's assigned to the filter, well, you'll hear it. There's the oscillation pitch that it's attached to. And then if you go to pan, it's just pan left, right. And how the panning's being used. There's a couple extra things. These are performance controls, so these are all about how it's being played when you're playing it live on the keyboard. But if we go and say, all right, and then of course there's an amp envelope, which I'm going to skip for now. But if we say, you know what, let's get rid of the LFO, let's get rid of the filter, let's do the slice edit mode. This is brilliant. This is the fun, easy part about this. Each slice we can draw in pitch modulation, panning modulation, any level difference, decay, changes. We can put them in reverse. We can choose the filter frequency on a slice by slice instead of using the global filter. And then this alternate, there's the option to do these alt outputs, and you'll see these slice outputs. And essentially, what we can do with these is we can draw them in. So watch how this works.
So it has a splitter already built into it.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes you're looking at it going, hey, I only want my kicks to go to output 1 and my snares to go to output 2, so you could mix it like a pro and mix them independently like you normally would as a mix engineer. Let's just go and draw some pitch adjustment. Command will erase that. And then we can do the same thing with panning, although you're not really going to hear the effect here. You can do the same thing with level, the amount of decay. This one's fun, reversing. Let's say we run it. That was kind of cool. And then filter frequency. Hear how that's shifting slice by slice. Yeah, and then you can write in the output option here. And there is a loop transpose option as well. So hopefully you understand. Now there's some CV mod input and output options. You can see some modulator input options here. And then of course these slice outputs, those output options for you to segment those. But that's it in a nutshell for the Dr. Octo Rex.